Your food is home-style trash, Emiya. This is a high-end event. We need a real chef. I didn't flinch. I didn't argue. I just set down the peeling knife and wiped my hands on the dish towel, slow and deliberate, while my brother's words hung in the air like smoke from a grease fire. If you've ever had a family member dismiss everything you've worked for, hit that like button and subscribe. Let me take you back to where this started. I'm Mia Sullivan, 31 years old, executive chef at a restaurant I won't name because I've spent the last 8 years building a career that exists almost entirely outside my family's awareness. That's not an accident. That's survival. My brother Ryan is 30, 1 year younger than me, but you'd think he invented the concept of success the way my parents talk about him. Ryan works in pharmaceutical sales. He drives a leased BMW. He wears watches that cost more than my first 3 months of culinary school tuition combined. And he has never, not once in his adult life, asked me a single question about my work. To Ryan, I'm still the sister who made pancakes on Saturday mornings when Mom was too tired. The sister who brought casseroles to family dinners because it was easier than showing up empty-handed to criticism. The sister whose little cooking hobby was cute when I was 22 and embarrassing now that I'm 31. What Ryan doesn't know, what none of them know, is that 3 years ago, I earned a Michelin star. One of only 11 restaurants in the state to hold that distinction. My name is in culinary journals. I've trained chefs who now run their own kitchens in New York, Chicago, San Francisco. I was offered a Netflix documentary feature last spring. I declined because I don't need the attention, and frankly, I don't want my family anywhere near that part of my life. I learned a long time ago that sharing my accomplishments with the Sullivans was like handing ammunition to people who'd already decided I wasn't worth the bullets. Growing up, Ryan got piano lessons at $200 a month for 6 years. I asked for a summer cooking camp when I was 14. It was $450 for 2 weeks. Mom laughed. You can learn to cook from the Food Network, Mia. We're not made of money. Ryan got a car for his 16th birthday, a used Honda, but it was his. I took the bus to my first restaurant job at 17, a 40-minute ride each way because asking for rides was inconvenient. When Ryan graduated from college, my parents threw him a party, catered, 60 guests, open bar. When I graduated from the Culinary Institute, top of my class with a job offer already in hand, my mother sent a card. Inside, she'd written, "Proud of you. Hope this cooking thing works out." I kept that card for years, not because it meant something, but because I needed to remember why I stopped expecting anything from them. The money I've given my family over the years would make your head spin. When Ryan's condo deal fell through 3 years ago and he needed $8,000 for a deposit on a new place, I wired it within 48 hours. He never paid it back. When my parents' furnace died 2 winters ago, I covered the $6,200 replacement because Ryan said he was between commission checks. When my mother needed dental work last spring, $4,400 for crowns and a root canal, I paid the bill directly to the dentist's office so she wouldn't have to stress about it. Total, over the past 5 years, $47,000. I have the receipts. Every transfer documented, every check photographed before I mailed it. Not because I expected repayment, but because I learned early that Sullivans have convenient memories, and I needed mine to stay sharp. In return, I got Christmas dinners where Ryan's sales numbers were celebrated like Olympic medals, while my career was summarized as Mia's still doing her restaurant thing. I got birthday calls that lasted 4 minutes and included at least one comment about how I work too much and should find a nice man and settle down. I got family group texts where my messages went unanswered for days, while Ryan's jokes got immediate laugh reactions from both parents. I swallowed it. Year after year, I swallowed it. I told myself this was just how families worked. I told myself that expecting recognition was childish. I told myself that my work spoke for itself, and I didn't need validation from people who wouldn't understand it anyway. Then Ryan got engaged. Her name is Brittany Davis. She's 28, works in marketing, and has the kind of confidence that comes from never being told no. I met her twice before the engagement, once at Thanksgiving, once at my mother's birthday dinner. Both times, she looked at me like I was the help. The engagement party was set for the second Saturday in June. My parents' backyard, transformed with rented tents and string lights and a dance floor that cost more to install than my first car. The guest list was 120 people. Brittany's family, Ryan's colleagues, friends from college, neighbors who'd watched Ryan grow up and thought he was such a nice young man. I wasn't on the planning committee. I wasn't consulted about the menu. I wasn't asked to contribute in any meaningful way. But 2 weeks before the party, my mother called. "Mia, honey, we need you to come early on Saturday, around noon. We need help with setup." I said yes. Of course I said yes. That's what I do. What I didn't know was that help with setup meant I'd be stationed in the kitchen, peeling potatoes and chopping vegetables like a prep cook, while the real entertainment, the real chef, arrived to thunderous applause. I found out about the hired chef 3 days before the party. Ryan mentioned it casually in the family group text, the one where my messages go unanswered. Big news. We got Chef Marcus Webb to cater the engagement party. Yes, that Marcus Webb. From TV. Brittany's dad pulled some strings. This is going to be insane. Chef Marcus Webb. I read the name 3 times. Marcus Webb, who was 22 years old and burning every sauce he touched when he walked into my kitchen 7 years ago. Marcus Webb, who I trained for 18 months, who I promoted to sous chef, who I wrote a recommendation letter for when he decided to pursue television opportunities. Marcus Webb, who sends me a handwritten thank you card every single year on the anniversary of his first day in my kitchen. My brother had hired my former student to cook for his engagement party. For $10,000, according to the invoice my mother accidentally forwarded me when she meant to send it to Ryan. $10,000. For a chef I trained, to cook at a party where I was assigned to peel potatoes. I didn't say anything. I didn't respond to the group text. I didn't call my mother to point out the irony. I just showed up on Saturday at noon, like I was asked, and I started peeling potatoes in the corner of my parents' kitchen while the rental company set up tables in the backyard. My mother bustled in and out, barking orders at the florist, adjusting centerpieces, completely ignoring me except to say, "Mia, make sure those potatoes are cubed small. Chef Webb is very particular." I kept peeling. Ryan arrived around 2, Brittany on his arm, both of them dressed like they were attending a garden party at a country club. He walked into the kitchen, saw me at the counter, and actually laughed. "There she is, the family's personal prep cook." He said it like it was a joke, like I should laugh too. I didn't laugh. I kept peeling. "Seriously, Mia, I hope you're not offended that we went with a professional for the food." Ryan leaned against the counter, arms crossed, that smirk on his face that I've hated since we were kids. "I know you like to cook, but this is a big event. Brittany's family is going to be here. We needed something elevated." I set down the peeler. I looked at him. "Elevated," I repeated. "Yeah, you know, high end, not..." He waved his hand vaguely in my direction. "Home style." That's when he said it. The words I'll remember for the rest of my life. "Your food is home-style trash, Maya. This is a high-end event. We need a real chef." The kitchen went quiet. My mother, who had just walked in with a tray of glasses, froze in the doorway. Brittany covered her mouth, but I could see her smiling behind her hand. And I stood there, potato peeler in my grip, and I felt something inside me go very, very still. Not angry. Not hurt. Just still. Like the moment before a pot boils over. The doorbell rang. My mother set down the tray and hurried toward the front of the house, grateful for the interruption. "That must be Chef Webb. Ryan, come greet him." Ryan straightened his collar and strode out of the kitchen like he was about to meet royalty. Brittany followed, heels clicking on the hardwood. I stayed where I was. I picked up another potato. I started peeling. From the front hall, I heard the door open. I heard my mother's voice, high and fawning. "Chef Webb, we are so honored to have you. Please, come in, come in." I heard footsteps. Multiple sets. The catering team probably, hauling equipment. And then I heard a voice I recognized. "Thank you, Mrs. Sullivan. I'm excited to be here. Now where's the kitchen? I'd like to get set up and..." The footsteps stopped. I didn't look up. I kept peeling. The kitchen door swung open. I felt the presence before I saw it. Felt the weight of someone standing in the doorway, frozen, staring. I finished the potato. Set it in the bowl. Reached for another. "Chef Sullivan?" The voice was barely a whisper. Reverent. Stunned. I looked up. Marcus Webb stood in the doorway of my parents' kitchen. He was wearing his signature black chef's coat, the one with his name embroidered in gold thread. His catering team stood behind him, holding equipment cases, looking confused. Marcus's face had gone pale. His eyes were wide. He was staring at me like he'd just seen a ghost. "Chef Sullivan," he said again, louder this time. Why are you—" He couldn't finish the sentence. Behind him, I heard Ryan's voice, impatient. "Chef Webb, is something wrong?" Marcus didn't answer. He stepped into the kitchen, slowly, almost carefully, like he was approaching something sacred. When he reached me, he stopped. He straightened his spine. And then, in full view of my brother, my mother, Brittany, and his entire catering team, Chef Marcus Webb, celebrity chef, television personality, man my brother paid $10,000 to impress his future in-laws, bowed, not a nod. Not a slight inclination of the head. A full bow from the waist, the kind you give to someone who outranks you in every way that matters. "Chef Sullivan," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "I can't do this. I can't cook for you. You taught me everything I know." The silence that followed was so complete I could hear the ice shifting in the drink glasses my mother had set on the counter. Marcus straightened from his bow, but he didn't move. He stood there, eyes fixed on me, waiting. His catering team remained frozen in the doorway, equipment cases still in their hands, exchanging confused glances. Ryan was the first to break. "I'm sorry, what?" Marcus didn't look at him. He kept his gaze on me, and when he spoke, his voice carried the same respect I remembered from 7 years ago, when he was a terrified 22-year-old who'd never worked a professional line in his life. "Chef Sullivan is the reason I have a career," Marcus said. "She trained me for 18 months at her restaurant. She taught me every technique I use on television. She wrote the recommendation letter that got me my first TV appearance." He paused, swallowed hard. "I send her a thank you card every year on the anniversary of my first day in her kitchen. She's the most talented chef I've ever worked with, one of only 11 Michelin-starred restaurants in this state." The kitchen had become a vacuum. No sound, no movement, just Marcus's words hanging in the air like a verdict. My mother's tray of glasses slipped. She caught it, barely, but 2 champagne flutes toppled and shattered on the tile floor. She didn't move to clean them up. She was staring at me like she'd never seen me before. "Michelin star?" Brittany's voice was small, confused. "What's a Michelin star?" Nobody answered her. Ryan's face had gone through several colors in the span of 10 seconds. Red, white, and now a mottled purple that I recognized from childhood tantrums. His mouth opened and closed twice before any sound came out. That's not possible," he finally managed. "Mia works at some restaurant downtown. She's a line cook or something. She makes casseroles." Marcus turned to look at my brother for the first time. The expression on his face was something between pity and contempt. "Chef Sullivan is the executive chef and co-owner of one of the most acclaimed restaurants in the region," Marcus said slowly, like he was explaining something to a child. "She was offered a Netflix documentary feature last year. She's trained chefs who now run kitchens in New York, Chicago, San Francisco." He shook his head. "I don't understand how you don't know this. She's your sister." I set down the potato peeler. I wiped my hands on the dish towel, slow and deliberate, the same way I had when Ryan called my food trash, the same way I'd done 1,000 times before walking away from a situation that didn't deserve my energy. Something inside me had shifted, not broken, shifted, like a door that had been stuck for years finally swinging open on silent hinges. I looked at my family, at my mother, still frozen with her tray of glasses, shattered crystal at her feet, at Ryan, purple-faced and sputtering, at Brittany, who was Googling something on her phone with increasing desperation. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel hurt. I felt clarity. The kind of clarity that comes after years of fog, when you finally see the landscape for what it is. "Marcus," I said quietly, "thank you, but you should go." He shook his head immediately. "Chef, I can't cook at an event where you've been treated like—" He gestured at the potatoes, the peeler, the apron I was wearing that said, "Kiss the cook," in faded letters. "Like this." "I know," I said. "That's why you should go. This isn't your fight." Marcus hesitated. I could see the conflict in his face, the desire to stay, to defend me, to refuse to participate in what he clearly saw as an insult. But he'd worked in my kitchen long enough to recognize the tone. When I made a decision, it was made. He nodded slowly. Yes, chef. He turned to his catering team. Pack it up. We're leaving. Wait. Ryan's voice cracked on the word. Wait. You can't just leave. We paid you $10,000. We have 120 guests arriving in 3 hours. You can't... I'll refund every penny, Marcus said without looking at him. I'll have my manager process it tonight. He paused at the kitchen door. And Mr. Sullivan? You should know that in the culinary world, what you just did, dismissing a Michelin-starred chef as a prep cook while she peeled potatoes in her parents' kitchen, that story is going to spread. It's going to spread fast. And no one is going to forget it. He walked out. His team followed. I heard the front door open and close. The silence that followed was different from before. Heavier. Loaded. My mother moved first. She set down the tray with trembling hands and stepped toward me, glass crunching under her shoes. Mia. Her voice was strange. Thin. Mia, why didn't you ever tell us? I looked at her. At this woman who had dismissed my cooking camp request with a laugh, who had sent a card to my culinary school graduation while throwing Ryan a catered party for his business degree, who had assigned me to peel potatoes in her kitchen while paying my former student $10,000 to do what I do better than almost anyone in the state. I did tell you, I said. I told you when I got my first head chef position. You said that was nice and asked if Ryan could borrow my car while his was in the shop. I told you when I was nominated for a James Beard Award. You asked what that was, and when I explained, you said it sounded like a lot of work for not much recognition. I told you when I earned my Michelin star. You said that was great and then spent 45 minutes talking about Ryan's new sales territory. My mother's face crumpled. I don't remember. I know, I said. That's the point. I untied the apron, set it on the counter. The kiss the cook letters faced up, faded and ridiculous. Ryan stepped forward, blocking my path to the door. His face was still that mottled purple, but there was something else in his eyes now. Panic. Mia, you can't leave. We have guests coming. We don't have food. I don't have to do anything. But you're a chef. Marcus just said you could cook the whole thing yourself. It would be easy for you. I stared at him, at my younger brother, who had never once asked me about my work, who had called my food home-style trash an hour ago, who was now demanding I save his party because he just discovered I was capable of saving it. You want me to cook, I said slowly, for your engagement party, the party where I was assigned to peel potatoes, the party where you told me my food was trash, the party where you hired my former student for $10,000 because you needed something elevated. Ryan's jaw tightened. Mia, come on. I didn't know. I said those things before I knew. You said those things because that's what you believe, I interrupted. You believed my food was trash. You believed I was a prep cook. You believed I wasn't good enough to cook for your high-end guests. I paused. And you believed all of that because you never once thought to ask me about my life. Not once in 8 years. That's not fair. You never told us about the star thing. I told you. I told Mom. I told Dad. None of you listened. None of you cared. Because you had already decided who I was, and nothing I accomplished was going to change that. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. But since we're being honest now, let me tell you a few other things you never bothered to learn. I opened my banking app, the same app I'd used to wire Ryan $8,000 when his condo deal fell through, the same app I'd used to pay for my parents' furnace, my mother's dental work, a dozen other emergencies that somehow always fell to me. Over the past 5 years, I said, I've given this family $47,000, $8,000 to Ryan for his deposit, $6,200 for Mom and Dad's furnace, $4,400 for Mom's dental work, another $28,000 in smaller amounts, birthday gifts, Christmas presents, loans that were never repaid, emergencies that couldn't wait. My mother made a sound like she'd been punched. $47,000, I repeated. From the sister whose cooking thing you hoped would work out. From the prep cook who makes home-style trash. I closed the app. That's done now. Mia, my mother started. I'm not finished. I looked at Ryan. You're going to call every guest on that list and tell them the party is postponed. You're going to explain that Chef Webb had an emergency. You're going to handle this yourself like an adult, because I'm not going to save you. Not today. Not anymore. Ryan's face twisted. You can't do this. Brittany's parents are coming. Her father he's important. If we cancel, it'll look like what? Like you couldn't keep a chef because you insulted the wrong person? Like you didn't know your own sister won a Michelin star? Like you've been coasting on the assumption that everyone around you will clean up your messes? I picked up my purse from the counter. That's not my problem anymore. I walked toward the door. Ryan stepped aside. He didn't have a choice. Not really. The fight had gone out of him the moment Marcus Webb bowed in his mother's kitchen. My mother followed me into the hallway. Mia, please don't leave like this. We can talk about this. I can make this right. I stopped at the front door. I turned to look at her. You've had 31 years to make it right, I said. You've had 8 years since I became a professional chef. You've had 3 years since I earned my star. You chose not to. You chose to see what you wanted to see, because it was easier than admitting you'd underestimated me. I opened the door. Mia. My mother's voice broke. I'm your mother. You can't just... Family doesn't treat each other like I've been treated, I said. Family asks questions. Family listens. Family shows up. You didn't. None of you did. I stepped onto the porch. I hope the party goes well. I hope Brittany's father isn't too disappointed, but that's not my concern anymore. You're making a mistake, Ryan shouted from somewhere behind my mother. You're going to regret this. When you need something from us, when you come crawling back... I didn't turn around. I didn't respond. I walked to my car. I got in. I started the engine. In the rearview mirror, I could see them standing in the doorway. My mother with tears streaming down her face, Ryan red-faced and gesturing, Brittany hovering in the background with her phone still clutched in her hand. I pulled out of the driveway without looking back. The drive home took 45 minutes. I didn't turn on the radio. I didn't call anyone. I just drove, hands steady on the wheel, breathing slowly, letting the silence fill the car like something solid and real. When I got home, I sat in my parking spot for a long time. The engine was off, but I didn't get out. I just sat there, watching the evening light change on my windshield, feeling the weight of what I'd done settle into my bones. My phone had been buzzing since I left my parents' driveway. I pulled it out and looked at the screen. 14 missed calls, 23 text messages, 3 voicemails. I didn't open any of them. Instead, I opened my contacts. I scrolled to Mom. I pressed the 3 dots in the corner. I selected block contact, then Dad, then Ryan. One by one, I blocked every Sullivan in my phone. I removed myself from the family group text. I deleted the thread without reading the messages. I archived every email from familysullivan@gmail.com without opening them. When I was done, I sat in the silence and waited to feel something. Grief, maybe, or guilt, or the sharp, familiar ache of being unwanted. What I felt instead was quiet, clean, like I'd finally stopped carrying something that was never mine to carry in the first place. I went inside. I made myself dinner. Nothing fancy, just pasta with olive oil and garlic and fresh basil from my windowsill. I ate it at my kitchen table, alone, watching the last of the sunset through my window. And for the first time in years, I felt full. The weeks after the engagement party passed in a kind of stillness I'd forgotten was possible. No Sunday calls where my mother would talk for 40 minutes about Ryan's sales numbers before asking, almost as an afterthought, how I was doing. No group texts where my messages went unanswered. No last-minute requests for money wrapped in the language of family obligation. Just quiet. Just peace. I threw myself into my work. Summer is our busiest season, and I had a new tasting menu to develop, 2 sous chefs to train, and a feature in a national food magazine that required 3 separate photo shoots. I worked 14-hour days and came home exhausted and satisfied, falling asleep to the sound of my own breathing instead of the anxious hum of waiting for the next family crisis. The first news came through Marcus, who called me 2 weeks after the party to apologize again for not staying, for not doing more. You did exactly right, I told him. It wasn't your fight. I know, but... He paused. Chef, I have to tell you something. The story got out about what happened at your brother's party. I'd expected that. The culinary world is small, and gossip travels faster than a ticket during dinner rush. I didn't say anything, Marcus added quickly, but my team was there. They saw everything, and one of them, I think it was Derek, my pastry guy, he told someone who told someone else, and now everyone knows, I finished. Everyone knows. The whole industry. There's a thread about it on the Professional Chefs Forum. Someone posted a photo from your brother's engagement announcement in the local paper and put it next to your Michelin star photo from last year's awards ceremony. He exhaled. Chef, your brother is getting destroyed. People are calling his company to complain. I heard his fiance's family pulled out of some business deal because they were embarrassed to be associated with him. I didn't feel satisfaction. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt nothing at all. That's not my concern anymore, I said, but thank you for telling me. The information kept trickling in over the following months, whether I wanted it or not. A former colleague who'd worked with one of Ryan's pharmaceutical clients mentioned that his sales territory had been restructured. A supplier who delivered to both my restaurant and a catering company near my parents' neighborhood mentioned that the Sullivans had canceled their order for a Labor Day party. Apparently, they couldn't afford it anymore. By October, I heard through a mutual acquaintance that Ryan and Brittany had postponed the wedding indefinitely. Financial reasons, supposedly. Brittany's father had pulled his investment from some business venture Ryan had been counting on, and the $10,000 they'd lost on Marcus's canceled appearance had been the start of a cascade they couldn't stop. 6 months after the engagement party, I learned that my parents had put their house on the market. The house where I'd grown up. The house with the backyard that was supposed to host Ryan's high-end party. The house where I'd peeled potatoes in the kitchen while my brother called my life's work trash. They sold it for $43,000 less than they'd paid for it 15 years ago. The market was soft, and they'd deferred too much maintenance over the years. The furnace I'd replaced was just the beginning. The roof needed work. The foundation had cracks. All the problems they'd ignored while throwing money at Ryan's BMW payments and Brittany's ring and engagement parties for 120 guests. They moved to a 2-bedroom apartment in a complex near the highway. My mother, who had spent 30 years cultivating her garden and hosting neighborhood parties and being the matriarch of a house she was proud of, now shared a wall with strangers and parked in a numbered spot in an underground garage. I found this out from a cousin on my father's side, one of the few relatives I still spoke to. She'd seen my mother at a grocery store, and she said Mom looked tired. Older? Like she'd aged a decade in 6 months. She asked about you, my cousin said carefully. She wanted to know if you were okay. I'm okay, I said. Better than okay. She said she's been trying to call you. She said the number doesn't work anymore. It works fine. I just blocked her. My cousin was quiet for a moment. Mia, I'm not going to tell you what to do. But she seemed really broken up. She said she didn't realize how much you'd been doing for them. She said she didn't know. She didn't want to know, I said. There's a difference. Ryan's situation was worse, though I learned about it in fragments and only because people kept telling me whether I asked or not. The pharmaceutical company he'd been so proud of working for restructured his position after the engagement party fallout. He wasn't fired. That would have been too clean. But he was moved to a territory that required twice the driving for half the commission potential. His numbers dropped. His BMW was repossessed. A year after the party, I heard he was driving a 10-year-old sedan he'd bought off a lot with cash, the only thing he could afford after his credit score cratered. He and Brittany had broken up. She'd moved back in with her parents, and the last anyone heard, she was engaged to someone else, someone whose family hadn't humiliated hers in front of a celebrity chef. Ryan was living in a studio apartment, working a job he hated for a company that had demoted him twice, explaining to anyone who asked why he wasn't married yet, why he'd had to move, why his life looked nothing like the success story everyone had always assumed it would be. I didn't seek this information out. I didn't need to know it. But it found me anyway, like the universe was making sure I understood that actions have consequences, even when you're not there to see them. The thing about boundaries is that they work in both directions. When I blocked my family, I didn't just stop them from reaching me, I stopped myself from reaching back. No more holidays spent choking down criticism with the turkey. No more birthday calls that left me feeling worse than before they rang. No more checks written against my own well-being. No more silent loans I knew would never be repaid. The $47,000 I'd given them over 5 years stayed given. I didn't ask her it back. I didn't file any kind of claim. That money was gone the moment I sent it, and chasing it would have kept me tied to people I needed to release. What I did instead was build. I expanded the restaurant, hired 3 new staff members, started a scholarship fund for culinary students from difficult backgrounds, kids who'd been told their dreams were hobbies, their passions were impractical, their talents were less than. The fund was anonymous. I didn't need my name on it. I just needed to know that somewhere, some kid who loved food the way I loved food was getting a chance their family wouldn't give them. I bought a house. Small, but mine. A cottage with a garden where I could grow herbs and tomatoes and basil that I'd use in my own kitchen. A kitchen with good light and enough counter space and no bad memories baked into the walls. I made friends. Real friends. The kind who asked about my life and listened to the answers. Colleagues who respected my work. Neighbors who brought me cookies when I moved in and invited me to block parties without ulterior motives. A community that knew who I was, not who my family had decided I should be. 1 year after the engagement party, I hosted my first Thanksgiving in my new house. The guest list was small. Marcus came because he'd become something like family over the years, the kind of family you choose instead of the kind you're assigned. 2 of my sous chefs came, both of them far from their own families and grateful for somewhere to belong. A neighbor who lost her husband the year before and didn't want to spend the holiday alone. 7 people around my table. Food I'd made myself, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. Wine and laughter and conversations that didn't circle back to who was more successful or who deserved more attention or who was disappointing the family this time. At the end of the night, after the dishes were done and the guests had gone home, I sat on my porch with a cup of coffee and watched the stars come out over my garden. My phone buzzed. I looked at the screen. It was an email from a culinary magazine asking if I'd be interested in an interview about the scholarship fund. Someone had figured out I was behind it, and they wanted to tell the story. I thought about it for a long moment. Then I typed a reply. Yes, I'd do the interview. Not because I needed the recognition. I learned a long time ago that my worth didn't depend on other people acknowledging it, but because somewhere out there, some kid who'd been told their passion was impractical might read that article and realize that the people who underestimate you don't get to decide how your story ends. I sent the email. I finished my coffee. I went inside, locked the door, and turned off the lights. The house was quiet. The kind of quiet that used to feel like loneliness, but now felt like peace, like freedom, like the specific hard-won silence of a life I'd built myself, for myself, without waiting for permission from people who were never going to give it. I never looked back, and I never regretted a single second of it. If you enjoyed this story about knowing your worth and refusing to accept less than you deserve, hit that like button and let me know what you think in the comments. And if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell for more stories just like this one. Thanks for watching.